Welcome to episode 4 of the Must Make podcast. Hi, Jack here. I hope you're enjoying your lockdown. Hope you're all safe and sound and not going out of your mind. I've been keeping myself busy by just learning After Effects. It's been quite fun because I can't use the studio at home. Thanks to all of you who've messaged and fed back regarding the episode with DRS. I thought that was a really good one. I really enjoyed talking to Del. Obviously, you can listen back if you're just joining us. The episodes with D-Bridge, LSB and DRS are up on whatever platform you're using. I've also just added to YouTube as well. So if you guys are YouTube users, you can get on there. A reminder as well that the Facebook group is becoming quite a nice little hub of people to discuss the topic of creative process and, feeding back on some of the conversations I've been having. So you can go join that. It's called the Must Make Podcast. It's a private group on Facebook, but I'll add you once you've requested to join. So yeah, that's all the housekeeping. So for episode 4, I've got my old friend Alix Perez. He was actually stuck in Portland, but we managed to get on the phone and talk. He's been stuck there as he was supposed to be on tour, but obviously everything's been cancelled. I've known Alix for a long time, since like 2005. We were pretty much coming through in like the drum and bass world when we were about 20-ish, roughly the same age, met roughly in about 2005. And we've pretty much known each other ever since. We were both signed to the same label for years. We talk all the time. We've collaborated a lot. And yeah, it was really good to catch up with him, really. He's definitely one of the most talented people I know. He just sort of streams ideas and, writes really quickly and never seems to be inhibited. But we had a really long and deep discussion about his process, and I tried to dig down a little bit into the things he struggles with and rules he lives his life by and stuff like that. And I don't know whether he's done a conversation like that before, but it felt quite personal and like honest. And it was really nice to catch up with him in that way. So hopefully some of you can draw some things from it and you enjoy it. So let's get into it. Yo, how's it going?
Yeah, good. I'm good. I'm in Portland at the moment, so I'm kind of confined over here, which it's fine actually. I was supposed to be here anyway because I had this like big US tour locked in, and then by the time I landed in the States, basically everything got cancelled.
Fuck.
So but the plan originally in between all the shows was to be in Portland with EPROM and finish our second album, which we're working on at the moment. So at least we can get, part of my mission being here is being fulfilled, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Cool. Well, that must be like a weird thing to adapt to. It's weird enough over here, to be honest, being at home.
Although I feel like, because I'm in Portland and we're in quite a rural, sort of area of Portland, it's really nice and green. I can go for a walk every day. I don't really see anyone. I can go for a run. As opposed to, my small flat in London, I feel like I've got a bit more freedom actually being here.
Yeah.
So it's not so bad. Yeah.
How does that feel like differently creatively for you, being there to being in London? Does it feel different?
I don't think so. There's definitely a different mindset. Like there's something about, for example, London gives me a sort of energy. And like when I think about music and I think about London, I think about a certain type of feeling, if you see what I mean. I kind of associate it with that. And Portland has its own thing. But I feel relaxed here, which is good, to be creative. If you feel relaxed and kind of rested, then you automatically, feel, kind of creative, I guess. But yeah.
Do you feel like a different headspace there, where it's like you're more Shades oriented in America and more Alix Perez oriented in the UK?
Yeah. I would say like, touring the States primarily has been Shades. I've been coming here as Alix Perez for a long time, actually. I think I played for the Nocturnal guys who their EDC, the biggest basically festival out there now. I've been going there since 2007, I think. So I've been here like in and out, but I'm kind of been building the Alix thing out here as well. But there is definitely, like, if I'm here in Portland, I feel like I'm here kind of primarily to work on that kind of sound,
Yeah, that's funny. That's interesting. There's like a little differentiation of space. So I don't know, like the first couple of these that I've done, I don't know like how much people who I've asked to talk to have understood or know like what I've done before or what I've talked about before. So I'm kind of just wading in and just sort of asking questions. So like one of the main things I've started off asking people who've been on so far is like to really force home the idea that I don't want these conversations to be like about like the tools that everyone uses to make music or to make their art or whatever, but to be about the process. And to try and exemplify that, I'm kind of asked Luke and Darren and Del, like if they had, like, not many of us probably still have big questions that we don't know the answers to creatively anymore, but if there was like some mystic person out there who does something creatively or does something that you admire, and you'd want to ask them like a question about what their process is, like who would it be and what would you maybe think about asking them?
Like like a musical figure that I really look up.
It could be any person. It's like if there's some sort of like thing about like, because I always think if you were going to ask someone a question, it wouldn't be like what EQ do you use. It would be like, so do you know what I mean? Like if you were asking your musical idol or some creative idol out there a question, you wouldn't go up to them and go, so what compressor did you use to make that sound? You'd be like, I'd be trying to get into what the process was and the approach to getting the result that they got that you admire. Do you know what I mean? So I kind of wonder what it is about other people's process that you would be inquisitive about if you got the chance to ask them about it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess like musically, there's quite a lot of people I look up to. Straight off the bat, I don't know why I'm thinking this person, but since you asked me, and I'm just going to go with the first person that popped into my mind.
Okay.
But like someone like Flying Lotus, for example, which I really, I love him as an artist because from his first album, 1983, it was more like straight boom bap with like, a mix of electronic. So, like synthesizers with kind of straight organic, boom bap beats, which that's what caught my ear at first, because I was just like, okay, this is an interesting mix of things, where before, like a lot of the sort of instrumental hip hop was very sample based. Although some of his stuff his as well, but I felt like he had he connected the dots kind of thing. And then now, it's almost, if you listen to his newer stuff, it's got a lot of live instrumentation, and a lot of musical, like pure organic musical factors in it. But I just like to get more into his mind of, what made him decide that, at that point it was okay to have loose elements in kind of, sequence electronic music. You see what I mean? Because his stuff is very loose, and that's what kind of stood apart at first. So it'd be more like kind of getting into people's minds, and I would ask him where that comes from. Like, is it from his jazz background? He's got family background in jazz. Just things like that, more like, the actual like musical approach, and how that could, benefit me, because I feel like with drum and bass, let's be honest, it's very gridded. Like most of the time, it feels like we're kind of, even just from the writing perspective of things, I feel like, although I know I can be as creative or I could be as weird as I can, I have to be conventional in some way. And I accept that, and that's okay. I don't have to be, but there are various reasons why I might do that, I feel like I'm already sidetracking here, but I'm just going to let my mind...
that's fine.
But yeah, it's just like, I'd be interested to know what it's like to... Because I feel like Flying Lotus now doesn't care and just does what he wants, and is probably as creatively free as can be. So it'd be interested to tap into someone's mind that, you know what I mean, that doesn't have any sort of restrictions.
Yeah. So I would say the same about someone like him. It's almost like not an envy, but it's like, fuck, how have you managed to free yourself of all other restraints? I think it's probably primarily the world that we come from in terms of it. Things have to be sort of fitting a certain structure just because it's a DJ world and they need to fit that way, don't they? But I think it's kind of interesting actually that you even say that, because I'm sure like if people like Perez fans were looking at you, they'd be asking the same thing about how you've managed to write loads of different types of music, like your Shades thing and the Alix thing and the 140 stuff, and even like on your albums you did loads of non-drum and bass stuff. I'd say you're probably like one of the most diverse producers from the same world that I'm in. I just think personally I think it's a more interesting conversation to sort of dig into like process and feel, and also like to go back to the Flying Lotus point, it's like how did he manage to get himself into that headspace where he doesn't give a fuck and he's got that freedom, and that's an interesting thing from a creative standpoint, is like like freeing yourself of all the baggage that comes with it. And that, like, what's so fun, what's been the maddest thing about doing these podcasts is I've had like countless messages from people being like, oh my God, I didn't realize that everyone has the same problems I have. Like all these people that are trying to write music, and they're just like, fuck, I didn't realize that everyone had the same issue. But they're all tinkering away thinking, shit, this is really difficult. And I think people will realize that actually everyone finds it very difficult at times, and it's always a struggle. But actually, that was something I just literally went for a walk. I went to walk the dog quickly and wrote some shit down. And I tried to write down like the main things that I could think of about you. Because it's quite difficult actually to talk to you about this, because I think like I've known you for so long that it's almost like I know the answers to a lot of the questions I would like that people might know the answers to. So it's difficult for me to work out how to ask them. Do you know what I mean? But one of the things that I wrote down was that I think most people would agree, and you'd probably agree, that you're pretty prolific in the way that you work. And I know that you work super quick and write lots and lots and lots of music. So, like, I wonder what it looks like when, or if it ever looks like difficult for you to write music, and what that looks like and how you get out of it. And also, I guess on the positive as well, like how you get into a good mindset for writing when you know you're in a good state to be writing and being prolific.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like everyone else, I struggle. There's no denying that. Ups and downs, highs and lows. It's the usual agenda, like for a producer, writer, whatever you want to call yourself. But I found, like, more recently in the last 3 or 4 years, I've been touring a lot, but touring in chunks. And so I would do 2 or 3 months away from home touring solidly, where on tour, I don't really get to make much music. I don't really feel like making much music because it's so, taxing, the whole touring thing. It's kind of exhausting and demands a lot of energy, on stage every night and whatnot. But I found that then gave back quite a lot of hunger, when I would get home and I finally get back to the studio. So like recently that's been helping a lot. And I feel like even before that, in general, there is a pattern where, I would have a block and I'd struggle, and I still struggle now to a day. To this day, I can tell you I don't have an answer for, getting over a creative block. I have certain things, like not pushing through or trying not to become frustrated as much as I have done in the past. But in general now, I would just, let it happen. And then eventually something comes back, something clicks, and that's the start of a creative, pattern. And I will maximize on that and try as much, write as much music as I can. But it changes from time to time. There is a pattern, but like I said, it's very difficult. I feel like there's no answer. The things that can, you know, ameliorate your situation or your way of writing or your way of facing a creative block. But it's something that everyone deals with. Fortunately, like you said, I have quite a lot of creative time. And yeah, so I will really try and make as many ideas or as many vibes as I can while it's there, that I can then bank on and work on maybe when I'm not feeling so creative. So it's about maximizing that creative time. Really, that's what I try and do.
So I guess there's two sort of sides or two aspects of it that I think like I think I like know some of the answers to, because I think we work fairly similarly in some ways, but also I guess it would be nice, cool to know the answers. Is like, first of all, would be is there any like, because obviously you said on a sort of broad basis that it's touring and then working in the studio, but like on a daily or sort of routine basis, do you have a routine when you know you're going to be working creatively, or do you sort of keep it loose, or do you need a creative routine, or is it just sort of like, when you feel it, you go when you fancy it, and things just happen?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm in London, at home and I'm not touring, I'll try and have like, I like to have a bit of a structure to my day. I like getting up early, working out. I feel like working out before going to studio does a lot for me. I just like, to exercise, like cardio. It clears my head, and it gives me, natural endorphins, and uh, it's just it's essential for me now to exercise, and I feel like it really clears my head in the morning, and by the time I'm walking to the studio, I feel kind of focused already. And I found that the older I've got, the less focus I have, like, or I tire a lot quicker than before. I don't know if you have the same thing, but like I would say from midday, or like from 11 to 5 6 p.m. is kind of when I can apply myself the most in
Yeah,
the studio.
yeah.
Um, if I and then after that, I really, I don't know if it's an age thing. It probably is. But yeah, so I'll try and have some kind of structure, and if I'm in London and I'm not touring in the States, or abroad on a big tour, I usually have maybe a show Friday, Saturday. So I'll try and go in like Mondays. I take off most of the time to concentrate on some like boring admin stuff and label stuff, or maybe design, and then Tuesday to Thursday I try and like kind of make that my studio time.
Even I find even having that shorter space of time sometimes difficult. I sometimes need like a clear 2 week run where I can really, where it's
Mhm.
like nothing in my diary, and it's like I just got to, like I sometimes if I go in on a Monday and I know I've got a gig Friday and I've got something maybe on a Tuesday, Wednesday that's going to block my week out, that sometimes gets in the way of the whole thing. So I'm like, I'll go in on Monday and go, what's the point? I'm not going to get anything done this week because of this. But then, yeah, I was going to say, with regard to the knowing your working hours, it could just be that you like. I feel like probably the experience factor means that you just know not to push if something's not happening, or at a certain point, nothing good's going to happen after that time. Like it's like that old saying, like when you go to a party, that nothing good ever happens after like 4 a.m. or something like that.
That
It's a similar sort of thing, but then also like I've sometimes had days where nothing's happened, and then suddenly at 5 to 6, just before I'm about to leave, I'll find a sample, and then or something will happen, and then it's like shit, and then suddenly you're there till 10 p.m. or something.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you could spend a whole day, feeling super low, and then like, you change something or change a sample or something really simple, and it just like flips the whole idea, and then suddenly, you're going home happy. Or you could be thinking, starting the day feeling super content, and then by the end of the day, you've completely ruined the tune or the idea that you had, and then you go home like feeling really sorry for yourself, which it's a quite, occurs quite a lot.
Yeah.
um it's really tough on the mind and on yourself. I really struggle, and I seem like I put myself down even more if I quote unquote fail a studio day or whatnot.
What does a
Like
failed studio day look like?
just like not realizing a good idea. So like for me, it would be like, just creatively failing, I guess. Failing sounds very like corporate and academic. I guess it's a bit weird but yeah, just not realizing a good idea, a good musical idea. Because for me, it's like the mix sound, the mixing and all that stuff that's secondary, really. I'm all about the music and the vibe first and foremost. Like I will never push through with something unless I know I get a vibe from it. And a vibe I couldn't always explain it. It could be a sample, it could be an idea that's quite odd, or something that I haven't done before, or something exciting. But that's the hardest part, I think, and that's what writing music is, isn't it? It's laying the foundation and the kind of basis of a groove, or like an idea, and it's not as easy. Sometimes it comes together naturally.
Yeah. I find that to be the most difficult thing, but also it's like a really valuable attribute to have. I think, like, I've reckoned with that a lot recently, where I would get myself really, really beat myself up about not having an idea for the day, or like having something solid for the day. But then actually, when you think about it, if you didn't do that, you wouldn't go back the next day and try really hard again. You might be like defeated, or otherwise just like, be like, well, I can't do it anymore. Do you know what I mean? But I feel like that attribute's a gift and a curse in that sense, where you just keep going back and you keep going back to the grind, sort of thing.
Well, yeah, you need that dynamic, and you need to, you can't always be up. It's like everything in life. Like it's not always high. It's like when you're younger and you party and you're on your high, you're gonna have the low the next day. It's just it's just life. That's just how it works. And like you said, for me, those days they can be really tough, and like. I will like go as far as questioning, my ability as a producer altogether, and really like, it can get quite deep sometimes, but but then you have the extreme, the opposite, and that feeling is insanely good. Like the feeling of nailing a vibe or nailing a tune, like it's worth the low as much as how good the high feels. And I think that's part of being an artist. And I think if you speak to anyone, I don't think anyone's always on the high. So I'm sure everyone can relate to that. For me, it's like I like to think I progress in terms of how I accept that, and I am getting better. You learn certain things that may like aid you in sort of accepting a shit day in the studio, and going home and tomorrow's another day, and like it might be completely different, and you might write your best tune the next day. You don't know.
You just got to keep doing the work. It's one of those old classic sayings, isn't it? It's like you just got to put yourself in a position to do it, and then if you don't go and try, you definitely won't. But if you do, you might have a shit day, but that's the gamble. It's one of those. But I was going to ask you actually, like, for me, one of the biggest things about, this is another thing that I've been thinking about personally, but it's like one of the biggest things that keeps me going is that feeling of like euphoria when you nail an idea, or you're in that feeling of like flow. So I think, like, I can't speak for you, but I feel like that's like your vibe as well. Similarly, is that you're always on the hunt for that sort of flow state vibe. But I wondered if there's like other stuff that compels you. Is it like an addictive thing to go to the studio, or do you have to go? Or like, what do you feel like when you don't? And how what's your relationship with that kind of aspect of it?
There's different factors. I mean, like, I'm sometimes nervous, because I'm nervous of what's going to happen in the studio, and like mentally, it depends what mental state I'm in. Like, if I'm feeling a little fragile, a little tired or something, I could be like a little, not
scared, but a bit like, feel some kind of way. And sometimes I don't want to go to the studio because I'm like, what if this aggravates the way I'm feeling, which is, I don't know, that sounds like a negative thing.
No, it doesn't. I struggle with that as well, because but then sometimes I force myself to go because I feel like if I don't, then I've failed, if that makes sense. Like, I don't like to have that feeling dictate my ability to go and do what I sometimes see as my job, and sometimes see as like I have to go and put myself in the spot, because it's the same thing as well. Like, some days I go, like, similarly to you, where you're like, you turn up and you're nervous, or before you're just like, I'm not sure if I'm feeling this. And sometimes I force myself to go and I've had a shit day, and sometimes I force myself to go, and it actually alleviates all of those symptoms in itself. Do you know what I mean? So it's like the giver of shit vibes and the giver of good vibes. Like, it can turn your whole day around. Like, one shit studio day can make 5 more shit ones, but one good one can turn, everything around. It's kind of one of those funny ones. So
yeah.
The way I'd phrase that as a question to you, I guess, would be like, is your mood determined by studio, or like, what's your relationship between like the creative struggle and your general sort of, like, I don't know, demeanor, mood? Does it have much power over that sort of feeling?
Well, I guess that's one thing that I've been sort of learning to deal with. And if I do have a bad day in the studio, I try and leave that at the studio.
Okay.
And I don't have a switch. It doesn't work like that. But I feel like I can come away and leave that feeling of failure behind better than I have in the past. Or, like, kind of, it's really like telling your, in your head, being like, this is music, and I kind of leave it attached to the studio, if you see what I'm saying.
Sure.
And then, if I'm going to see, if after the studio I'm going to go home and cook dinner with my girl, or I try and, I don't want this mood to affect, my life outside of it as well.
Has it though before? Like, I find I come home sometimes and I have a real difficulty switching that mood.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Of course. And then, you feel silly because, it's affecting everything. And, you have to kind of try and limit, or like have some kind of separation, because we're already so involved with like our careers, like being an artist. It eats up so much of your life, and a lot of things revolve around your career. And there's a point where you have to separate that a little bit, and I've been trying to become better at that, and leaving things like that, those kinds of feelings behind. And then pick up the next day, and then usually by the time you go to the studio the next day, you've forgotten about it, or you it's like a reset, So but it's hard. It's a daily challenge, and it's that unexpected. It's like walking in blindfolded. Like every time. But like, again, when you have those real highs, they're like hard. It's hard to explain the feeling. Like, it's so, like, I don't know, liberating almost, and uplifting. So it's worth the rest. All the stress and doubt, self-doubt, and critique and everything. It just comes with it. But I feel like being a perfectionist, I feel like I definitely am, and it has its ups and pros and cons, let's say. But striving to be better is what makes you, I think, pushes you as an artist. If you become complacent and content with everything, I feel like you kind of lose the drive a little bit, maybe. And I'm like, I'm like really like quite a bit of a perfectionist and workaholic. If I'm honest.
Don't take this the wrong way, but I wouldn't say, I don't mean this in a bad way at all, but I wouldn't say that you are a perfectionist, because I think that you don't struggle to let go of ideas. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you make a lot of music, and you often go from finished to mastering to release quite quickly, I think. Maybe I'm wrong, but like that's like my perception of
No,
like,
you're right.
so you must have
I think you're right.
yeah, so you must have like a relationship with imperfection in a way, or like you get to a point where you're happy with something and then it's gone, you know, or moves on.
I think I would say it's more like the imperfections would be more like, you know, the sort of mixed down aspect of things where like it's more like I'm happy to let go with some of that. I don't think I'm like the best like technical producer out there. I mean, I think my mix downs are okay. A lot of people ask me and seem, I don't know, like, you know, a lot of questions raised with, you know, whenever I do Q&As about my production and my mix downs and stuff. I think for me, it's more I'm a perfectionist in terms of the vibe, you know, like if it's not right, then I won't let go or I won't proceed to finish a track. So it's more about, you know, not vibe's never perfect, but, you know, feeling content enough to move forward and like finalize a tune. But I have learned to let go because, you know, there's only so much you can do. And I know you're definitely a perfectionist, especially in the, you know, with mix downs and stuff, where I would potentially let go before you do, you know.
I think it's for me, it's like, I go around the block tweaking stuff because, to get in my own way of just finishing the tune and just being as confident enough to say, no, actually, that's done. It's literally almost serves a function of, oh, well, actually, no, I can't let go of this one yet because I need to just tweak that bit of the mix. Do you know what I mean? It's not, it is literally just sometimes you finish a tune. I sometimes finish a tune and then sit back and admire the work and then pick at it and pick at it and pick at it rather than just being like, that'll do and put it out. It's not like I haven't done that before. I have had ones where I'm like, the demo is the tune that goes out. It's the version that goes out into the world is like the first demo, but it's not that often, and it's usually with the tunes that I'm not quite happy with vibe wise. It's funny how you let other stuff get in the way of finishing a tune. And it usually does come down to vibe because you can sometimes put one sound in, change nothing mix wise, and it's just done.
I was going to say, like, a good example would be like Forsaken, that was written in like 2 hours, you know, like it didn't need anything else. But I guess it's hard to measure because everyone has a different, you know, reference point as to what is finished or what isn't, because some people are like overly perfectionist and will never let go. You know, I think some artists will agree that a tune is never finished, even if it's been released and put out. They'll be like, well, that this could have been done. And whereas I'm like, once it's out, it's out there, and if I let it go out there, I should have been happy at that point, you know. So it's more about the actual vibe of the tune. The content of the music is what's really important and what I'm putting out there, you know, like how I'm projecting myself as an artist, you know, like it's not, I don't care if someone thinks my kick is like flappy on this tune. I honestly couldn't care.
Sometimes, but I feel like sometimes, like, not to get too technical, but sometimes those things give give tracks character anyway, like not being perfect. The imperfections are the things that I always look back on tunes, you know, like.
Well, I was going to say, well, yeah, I mean, like you said, imperfections, you know, they give character, and I think that's cool. And it's, you know, and it's, you know, some of the things I do, like technically, some people will be like, you know, I've had people go like, what, like you shouldn't do that, or you shouldn't. That's not how it works. It's like, well, I don't really care. Like if it sounds good to me, and if it adds something, you know, sometimes I do something weird and I don't know if it's really doing anything, or like, you know, it might be a slight thing, and it might actually be an imperfection, but without it in the, you know, without that process in the track, it doesn't sound the same to me, you know. It's like, but it could be a personal thing as well. So it's hard to explain, really.
It's. Do you feel like I think a similarity that I found working with you, and again, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, is it's like, and I find this with all music that I work on, but I noticed it in sessions with people and in sessions with you, is like it's a battle between your relation. It's like the relationship between you and what you're working on, and if you feel positive about it, then everything's fine and all the mix decisions don't matter and all decisions are kind of working. But if you don't feel positive about it, they don't. A good example would be when we did that EP, the Spectral Soul and Perez EP that we did a couple of years ago, where we wrote pretty much all those tunes over one weekend. And I remember on the first day thinking, like, all of these are shit, I don't like them. And it was my mindset. I know it was my mindset, because we went back the next day and we were like, fuck, these are great. And it's just funny how your mindset and your relationship to what you're working on it's just really super important. It's not like objectively a good tune until you think it is, even if you're working on something great, until you're in the right headspace to almost like appreciate it.
That's right.
Doesn't really, there has to be a relationship. And so I guess actually that would be a good question. Is there any music out there that's like not the obvious ones of yours that everyone loves, that you've got like a more of an affinity with because you've got some interesting relationship with it?
I mean, I think for me, it's always the tracks that aren't as popular, that, you know, have a more kind of personal value, like, you know, like kind of emotional value that maybe I feel from the track, but other people don't perceive it in the same way. You know, like, I don't know. I feel like maybe a track in my head gives me like some kind of nostalgia, or it projects like a memory, or it triggers something, you know, where like, and sometimes you can't explain it. And then some people might not get that feeling at all. And I think it's more the obvious tracks, like, you know, the kind of like emotional catchy hooks that, you know, people will latch onto, you know, the kind of more obvious things, but then there are like subtle things in certain tracks that I hold on to, you know, they're like, I don't know, they have a special feeling or something. And I don't know why.
I get this thing with tracks, with popular tracks, that you almost naturally turn away from them a little bit because they're popular. And that's weird, because you're almost like subverting your own work. You know, you're almost going, oh, that's like, people like that one, so I'm less into it. Do you know what I mean? Because I think naturally being like in a alternative underground type of music, you naturally go away from stuff that most people like. That's a weird one. You know, but
you mean like, oh, people like this one, so it's not that cool, you know? Like,
maybe, but it's just it's like a natural. Let's keep it. Like for me, it's just like, let's keep it moving. Let's just move on to the next thing. I'll never sort of sit around and like really either like lap up all the good that's coming off something and be like, yeah, let's really sort of like. I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's more like I won't try and replicate or really take more plaudits or like enjoy the praise for good things you've done. It's more like I just want to keep it moving and like almost go back to the other ones and try and show them a bit of affection. Like there's tunes of mine that no one, like they've had like the least plays on and the least buys and stuff on Spotify and whatever, and I'm just like, they're my favourite ones because you caught something with it, you know.
Well, it's funny because there's a bit of a correlation there, I think, with me, where it's like all the music that I like the most of mine is probably the music that I never play out. Like, you know, it's, because it's, I don't know, I guess like, for example, like my next record is very musical and it's all musical kind of, and it's all pretty much like sort of soulful record, like an extended record, but it's like, I don't know, I probably won't play half of it. Some of them, yes, because they're a little bit more conventional and those kind of soulful tracks, but I'm totally cool with that, and I've been wanting to do a record like that for a while, where it's just listening music, and, you know, especially in this time right now, the focus on making something club orientated has been taken away a little bit. Like, you know, although to be fair, I still enjoy it, like regardless. If we were not to play out again, I would still make club music because it gives me that excitement in the studio. But I think it's mad how it's changing everything a little bit, you know, the outlook on things.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
You've probably timed that pretty well to put out like a musical record right at the time where like people are going to be streaming records big time and not being able to go and dance them in clubs. I've had lots of conversations about release schedules and not about my own stuff, but partly, but like with other people about like how they're adapting, and like, you know, there's lots of people making big decisions about club records and whether they're going to put them out now or not, or wait, you know, and it's kind of thrown a bit of a spanner in the works for that.
I think like a lot of people would be worried about releasing, you know, a popular record. Like they would, you know, be played out in the clubs a lot when they can't play a show. Almost like, oh well, it's pointless, you know, like or like if it's music released to basically get shows. Because a lot of the time, you know, we most of us make our money from playing out, and in some way make records that will get us shows, you know, like or there's some kind of you know, idea behind it. So it's interesting. Yeah. Like, I mean, with me regarding the label, we're not really gonna change anything. We're just gonna carry on as we were.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. Yeah, things are changing a little bit.
I like that it's sort of, and the way I would characterize what we're talking about is it's allowing people to be a bit more self-indulgent with the music they make, rather than thinking about purely about the function. And I think that also speaks to what we were saying about our favorite tracks, like the ones that I think of mine and the Spectre Style records that I think of that are my favorites are the ones where we were being super self-indulgent, or like really, but they still came out to a good result that I was happy with. Not ones where you're writing almost with a function in mind, where it's like, I've written this and it's created a vibe I really like, and it wasn't written for any purpose, but it still ended up as it is, and therefore like I have a really positive relationship with those. So it's going to create, this situation is going to create a lot more of that as a byproduct as well, because people are sitting around at home not thinking about clubs, you know, just writing weird music.
Yeah, I mean, I was craving to do something like that for a long time, actually. Like, I think the last time where I really did that was actually maybe my first album, second one as well, but where I'm actually, you know, sometimes if I'm writing a roller, it's like, oh yeah, okay, this is done, and then you just kind of roll out the outro, and then that's it, you know, where I want to, with these tracks, it's like I want to sustain the feeling all the way through, and there's going to be different sort of, you know, there's going to be like a lot of dynamics in the emotion, you know, like it's up and down, and you've got an intro, you've got an outro, and every track kind of, you know, blends into the next one. And I haven't done that. I haven't worked on a project like that for a while, and I realized that I missed it, you know.
More like a body of work rather than individual tracks together.
That's right. That's right. And not caring, you know, not really caring about the impact it would have in a club or
but again that's a really like privileged position to be in, like, because, and obviously you've got there because of like the position you've worked to be in a position where you can take a backward step and then, you know, write some indulgent music and put focus on that again. I think it's like it's a weird one. You can do it at the beginning of your career when you're just starting out and there's no consequence, and then you can do it once you've reached a level that you can sustain yourself and be able to, you know, do these things without much risk of it really affecting like your livelihood, I guess. And that's the struggle, really, isn't it? It's like,
as an artist, if I could live from, you know, being totally free and writing the weirdest music or whatever, you know, I mean, I have complete freedom, is ideal, but it's not always like that, you know. No. As you know, there's you know, you have to make amends, and you know, you have it's just how it is, you know. Like, it's like you can't have it all. You can't have. I mean, I guess you could, but like I don't think I'd be paying rent, you know, if I was completely indulgent and completely wanted to be free as an artist. Which is sad in a way, I guess, you know, but it's kind of how the model has been built, you know, a little bit, like with dance music and having to tour to make money, which is unfortunate. And honestly, I would be happy to sit in the studio most of the time, but I also love playing out, you know. And the weirdest thing for me right now, I think the thing I'm finding the hardest to process is not moving around. Like, I love touring. You know, a lot of my friends are like, I put up tour posters and they're like, mate, like, you're fucking mad. Like, how are you doing all these shows? Like, they're like, some of my mates are like, that's like my worst nightmare. And I'm like, I love flying around. I love traveling. I love, it's not always, sometimes it's in and out. Yeah, of course, and it's tiring, but it's an excitement for me. I like going to places, meeting new people, playing new shows. Like, obviously there is a routine and you do some of the same shows, but like, I don't know, man, like for me, it's part of the excitement, and I love touring. So at the moment, I'm finding it really weird to be confined in one place.
I haven't left like the square. I've barely left. Been out of the house like once a day, but I haven't been like any more than about a kilometre from the house, just in a walk, going for a walk, for like 3 weeks. I'm in quite a small flat, and I was finding it very difficult, the prospect of not being able to write music, because I get super moody and super sort of morose if I can't. And a few weeks ago, I was before they even announced the lockdown. I was like, look, I'm just going to get my shit out of the studio. I've literally just moved in, but because my studio is 10 miles away from where I live, I was like, right, I'm just going to get my expensive gear out of there just in case this all goes south. And now I've literally got Mac sound card and screen all set up on the coffee table in the front room. But I've actually, I tried to work on some music and it was really difficult, but I've managed to keep myself occupied and scratch that creative itch by learning something new. And I've basically just dived in and just taught myself After Effects in the last 2 or 3 weeks. And that is actually, it's proved something to me, weirdly, that it isn't just about music. It's so, because I used to scratch that itch just by going in and writing music, but now I'm managing to scratch that itch by creating stuff here. So it's like, well, what is it actually that I'm trying to do? And what is it actually that's fulfilling me here that is filling a void that has gone because of...
Well, you're just getting, it's like getting the same result, isn't it? Like, it's like, for me, it's like, with designing a record sleeve, or like, I don't know, some clothing for the label, like I get the exact same high if, I design a t-shirt, or like, I don't know, we work on something else and you see it in person. It's like seeing a record and it turned out exactly how you wanted it to be, I get the same sort of high from that, Do
you feel like that was required because you still had, even though you still wrote a lot of music and worked in the studio a lot, you still had more creative energy to get rid of? Or did you do it because you just wanted to keep what was the motivation behind that? I know, like, when you started the label, that you said that you wanted to be in control of a lot of the creative aspects of it. I couldn't imagine you handing it over to someone else, to be totally honest with you. But how has having that extra creative work helped or hindered everything else? Like, how has it folded into your general studio and music creative structure?
I think it's fed my kind of workaholic side of things, like it's given me more work to digest, but I love it, like it's basically like kind of expanding, I guess, my vision, like not just musically, but like the entire thing, the label is not just music, it's just design as well. I guess it's scratching the itch, like you say, but it's a slightly different one, I guess anything creative is within the same realm, but I feel like it's slightly different. But for me, the main thing is like, when I first, when I started the label, I was like, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to learn again. And that's the fun part, learning and achieving things, like, I don't know, like I need that, like, picking something else. And at first, you struggle, and same as the music, you hit a wall, you struggle, and then you break through. And that feeling is amazing. And I crave that, I think. And having the label and having, taking care of like the entirety of it. Obviously, I have management and they're amazing. And because as you know, there's a lot more behind the label. It's not just design and music. Obviously that's like, what, like, that's what the that's the soul of the label, let's say. And then obviously you have all the, more boring admin things, but they're just equally as important.
Yeah.
There's just so many aspects to it.
Yeah.
So it's cool. Like, I just feel like, and having the choice and having that choice where I can be like, well, you know what, music's not working out right now, so fuck it. I'm just going to do something else. Like, and like I'm starting to, I installed Cinema 4D, and I'm going to basically that's opening another can of worms, but there's just so many things to, that easily, you can easily reach and add to your kind of creative.
And they feed each other. That's the thing. They totally feed each other. Like working, if you have a good day working on some, and you design a sleeve that you think, shit, yeah, that looks wicked, it goes back and helps you feel more positive about the other creative stuff. I reckon I can see actually with the stuff that you design that you approach it in a similar, your process is well similar to the way that you approach your music. And I think maybe we should talk a little bit about what the music process looks like for you, because again, like you write a really diverse range of music, like loads of different styles and tempos and whatever you. So I would guess, like, if I wanted what the day would look like on a normal positive day, or not just a normal day, I guess, when you've gone to the studio and sat down. Do those days start in the same way? Do they have different like things that happen throughout the process? And technicals aside, like, what does that maybe look like?
I think it differs, and there's no answer to a perfect day, or if I approach this, let's say, if I'm going to start with drums today, it's going to go well, or if I'm just recording some weird shit on a synth, and is that going to go better, or how do I approach it, like you're asking me, and it's like there's no real answer.
Well, objectively for me, like the tune, like I think there's a couple of ways that I think that I can see that you work. Like one with the sample, like you're a bit of a whiz with just literally the cutting tool and a sample and like the basic tools within a DAW. You don't I remember when we did that Forsaken tune, and it was the piano's loop sounded totally different, same pitch and everything, but you just chopped it in a way. And the same with like all those other musical tunes that we did, Spectrasol and Perez. The way that you work with the sample is a certain way, but then you also, I've seen you work another way with synths where you'll just hit record and then just record a load of shit and then hope that some magic happens. I think that's like that's the way I like to work too, which is to just hope that something magic happens rather than going in with the intention of making magic happen, if that makes sense, or even knowing how to make good shit happen. It's more just like you go in with a playfulness and hit record and hope some good shit happens.
I think that that way of working, of just recording machines, is fun. Because you're just playing free. That you're not working to a grid, you're not working to metronome. You're just jamming basically, which is essentially how music starts, right? So that's a fun way of working, and I do that a lot. And not only that, because you're recording, you end up with hours of sounds, and that's creating content easily. That's creating something that you can have further down the line, as opposed to a sample where it's like, well, you working within a constrained, environment. Like you got to make something out of this particular sample, and then maybe blend different samples together, and that's like a whole other thing together. That's how that is. That can be like time consuming. But I don't have a certain set way of doing it. Although I do find if I'm writing particularly kind of sample based, then I have more of a formula, if you see what I mean. Like, because I've done it so much over the years, I'm like, okay, I know how this works, or I have my own approach, and which is fine. And like having some kind of formula is okay, as long as it's not exactly the same, but like having an approach of working, and and you know, knowing that this trick or this way of doing something is, you know, has that result, that's okay, because, you know, you're facilitating, you know, time for yourself. And, you know, and I think that's important in the studio as well, is to, you know, remember things and, like, you know, what works for you and what doesn't.
They come to you at the weirdest times as well, don't they? The things that you remember to do. Like, I remember writing a tune not very long ago at all, and thinking I needed something, and remembering that thing. I think it was on a bunch of tunes that we did, like literally in like 2006 or 7 or something, that never came out, where you'd get like a little bit of piano tail or something. So it's just a tone, and like looping one bar of it really high pass with a big chorus on it. Do you remember that trick back in the day, where it was like you'd have either the root note or like the fifth or something, just looping over the whole sample that could drop in and out with the chorus like really dialed in. And that came to me just in the middle of writing a tune. I hadn't done it for like 10 years, and I was like, oh, that'll work, and it just did. It just fell straight in. But again, that's literally just repeating the same process over and over again, and years of experience, and then allowing yourself the headspace to try shit. I don't know.
Yeah, but that's something, like, looking at old projects is good, because there are so many tricks that I forget, you know, like, you just, because you kind of focus on what you've recently achieved or what you recently works, right? So going back and kind of like brushing up on like old tricks is good as well, you know. And like you said, like I've been doing that recently, and like things that I've completely forgotten that maybe seem simple, but, you know, really add to your artillery, let's say. But, you know, I feel like I'm still learning constantly, and I still sometimes feel like I know fuck all, to be honest, you know.
Like, I think that's actually
I really do.
That's like probably the best lesson that I can't remember a specific person who's taught me it or told me it, but it's like, once you realise that you never stop learning, that's just like that. Then you realise you've as soon as you think, oh, I've cracked it and that's it, I never need to learn anything again. I think that's when you stop moving. That's when it becomes boring, and you probably begin to sort of nosedive in terms of your output and how fulfilled you are. But it's the same with what you were just saying a minute ago in terms of learning new software, learning new techniques, and revisiting old ones. As long as you keep learning and keep moving, that's like the best lesson or the best thing to keep doing, I think. I've actually written something down, but I didn't write this down for any of the others, but I think actually it's probably a decent question that I might just start incorporating into these, is like to ask whether you can think of or remember any other like major lessons or turning points, I guess, in what you were doing, and whether you can remember them. I can probably think of 2 or 3. They're not that important, and I won't reel them off because I'm not, talking about me, but like evolutions in your thinking, or I don't know, like literal lessons that you've learned. It doesn't have to be about music even. It could be just like wisdom. Like, that was what the thing was with Del when I was talking to him, was it just seems that as he's got older, he's just got wiser, and that's made it more easy for him to I
listened to that episode. It was really good. Like, it was more like you were saying, based on general life sort of focus. But I'm trying to think right now, because you put me on the spot.
But it could literally be anything. I mean, it's almost like something that you've adopted as like a mantra, or we've probably actually talked about some already, to be totally honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, like, when I look back at everything that I've done, and the most important thing to me now, and it still is artist integrity, and like being honest in your music. And like, if I look back at my career, I can see there are various points where I've been influenced by something, or may have been led astray a little bit. Not too much, but where I'm like, okay, I can hear what happened here, or like, oh, I went this way because of this. And I think always, in life, I think for me, it's always go with your gut feeling. If something isn't right, or if you're, doing something musically for any other gain than what you feel right about, then think about it twice, because you will always look back and you will see those points and you'll be like, I shouldn't have done that, or maybe I should have stayed true to what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest thing as well, is that once you do that and you put your music out there, it's always going to be out there, and there will always be some kind of reminder that, oh, okay, maybe I should have maybe done this, or I should have stayed true to what I did. And I feel like as an artist, I have stayed true to what I do. I feel like the label is a kind of like condensed idea of what I think is good. Not saying that it is good, but what in my head is an ideal of what I want to project, is what 1985 is. But really and truly, it's all about, there's not a record that we've put out that I've doubted, or, everything that we've put out there is what I believe in. And I've always wanted to do that from the start with the label. And that goes the same with honesty and treating, people on the label correctly and paying people on time, and, basically not reciprocating, things that have happened to me, like maybe that weren't good, in the past. Like everyone has their, goes through certain things, and it's about like giving a good platform, essentially, iron out the creases that when I was coming through, I was like, oh, well, this wasn't a good experience, or maybe this could have been better. And then I can try and project that with the label and with the people I work with as much as I can.
I think in our world, it's injected a whole new load of energy into things, because our sort of group of people who all roughly did it within the same 2 or 3 year period are bringing a whole different experience to what a label should look like and what the future is going to be like, and breaking down the models of labels of old, not breaking them down so they're gone. The good labels are still there, but it just has injected a new insight and a new energy into it. And you're right. I think like as an artist, you probably know the things that you enjoy about working with a label and the things that you didn't enjoy, and you can perpetuate the good and negate the bad. And I think it is important, and that's I would say one of the things actually that is the biggest factor, I'd say, with what you're doing is that it seems like it's given you, I'd say it's the most confident I've seen you in terms of like what you're doing and what you're putting out. And also I feel like when you started your label, that was like you taking the reins off in terms of not having to deal with anyone else's timeline, and also having a platform that can fulfill the needs that you have in terms of releasing a lot of music. And I'd say, I'd say the overarching thing about 1985 that I think is that there's a confidence about it, and that's also bred a confidence in what you're working on and what you're doing.
Well, I mean, it's nice to hear that you feel that. I mean, I still doubt everything, obviously, as you know.
But sometimes half the battle is just pretending that's like being like battling through the doubt and being like, actually, no, like this doubt isn't going to win. I know this is good, and you trust yourself a bit more with it. I think maybe that comes partly with age as well. Like you and I have been doing this roughly the same amount of time, and I think it's one of those things. Really, you just start to bat away the doubts a bit more easily and feel a bit more confident. I don't know whether that's universal. I just feel that way about me.
No, I feel that, and I think like we're at a point where like the label is almost going to. Actually, I couldn't believe it. I was like, it's going to be 4 years old, so it's flown already. I mean, 4 years is a long time, but obviously the older you get, time passes faster and faster. But I think like the reception is what has given me a bit of confidence as well. Like, oh no, like it's kind of achieving what I wanted it to do musically, and discovering artists and helping them. Like that was the main thing. Like, I don't want to just release my tunes. I want to try and help other people, you know, and like that's most rewarding above anything else. You know, the label was never to make money; it was just to like have an outlet where it can be in its purest form for me and my vision and the artists that I take on, and that's kind of what it's done. And I feel like that's some kind of success. And that's the best feeling, really. And everyone's happy, and I don't have to contract people. You know, they're free to go if they want to. But I feel like if I treat people well enough, then they won't leave. You know, simple as that, really. And if people do leave, then you know there's no animosity or, you know, times it's just I just want to have a kind of positive outlet. You know, that's the main thing.
That's one of the lessons learned from experience, I guess. With regard to feedback and you know, the positivity that comes from something, I wonder like how susceptible you are to people's critique or positive and negative critique, I guess, is like how much attention you give it and how much that can dictate what you work on and what decisions you make moving forward off the back of something.
Yeah. I think I'm better at taking critique. I think it's hard for anyone. You know, I think if it's constructive, then I totally take it on. And you know what? Actually, critique is really good because it puts things from a different perspective where I may not have seen it that way. You know, I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that angle, or you know, I think as long as it's constructive and it's not destructive, like purely for the reason of, you know, some people will just put things down for I don't know why, for their own, you know, reason. So as long as it's, you know, it's like it's critique that's gonna, like, you know, help me better the things that are being critiqued, then that's fine. But you know, on the internet, you have to treat it with a pinch of salt, as you know, and like, I don't really pay attention too much, to be honest with you. I don't go on forums. I don't really read any of that shit. I just kind of do what I believe is right, and hope that people get it. Like, you know, so yeah, I that's kind of where I stand on that.
Do you think anyone's ever really like got it? Do you know what I mean? And to caveat that, I should say, like, do you have an idea of what you're trying to sort of not convey, but like a mood or a tone or something, where you've read something and someone said something, or someone said something, and they've clearly, understood what you were trying to do?
Not like from reading stuff online. I mean, like, it's more like direct feedback, like at events that we do, or, you know, kind of seeing the support, like, you know, people coming out to shows and people buying vinyl, you know, like these days, like a vinyl's a fucking pain in the ass. I'm not going to lie. Like, you know, like it takes a lot of time and effort, but I still love it. And I don't know, like, I just feel like if you're doing vinyl, like, it, you know, you're really spending a lot of time on that, and that kind of, like, I don't know, sets the tone a little bit, that you're a little bit I'm not saying that if you're a digital label you're not serious, but I just feel like, you know, it's a little bit extra. But it's hard to quantify, like, success, or, like, you know, like, oh, the label is doing really well. Like, what do you base it on? Like, oh, you did for 500 units, you know, vinyl. Is that success? I don't know. I think it's more like, for me, success is again, like, you know, staying true to what I do and my vision, and it working, I guess, and in some way that's like, based on that, I guess. I don't know. It's hard to, like I said, it's hard to you know, put it in, like, form, like what is success really, you know. For me, it's just like, it's actually quite hard if you put it that way.
It's funny, every time I've asked the question, I've been like closing the podcast by asking people what success looks like. Every time you get an answer, it's usually nothing to do with music. It's usually like a realization. I think it might differ if I was to speak to like a new young artist. They might think about things slightly differently, but I think maybe where I've spoken to people who are in their mid-30s to mid-40s, you kind of get to a point, don't you, where you're like, actually, this stuff is really, really important to me, and I'll always think it's really important to be creatively fulfilled and, make stuff. But actually, all the other stuff is just so important as well. Like it's a balance between your life and what you want to get out of your life creatively and what you're going to leave in the world when you're gone. And that's maybe that's why I'm picking to talk to people who are like either my contemporaries or like people who are just my peers or around the same age group, because like honestly maybe I'm trying to unpick that as well, where you're trying to work out what the next 10 years is going to look like, and like make sure that you have an understanding or you're trying to develop that understanding of where you're going and what you want to do and why it's important, and almost like justify it to myself to a degree. So it's like I've been thinking about this after recording the podcast, where I'm like, actually, this conversation is really interesting about process and creativity. But actually, the more I talk about this stuff and think about it, it's actually about where creativity coexists with real life and growing up, and what creativity is and how it serves a function in the world, and how that function burdens the people that are doing it, and how they mitigate that, because I'm probably looking for ways to mitigate it and navigate it a bit better than I have in the past. It's just I find it really difficult, and I think it's like the cliched thing of the creative struggle, and if you're not struggling, you're not going to make proper art. And even Dell said like that his missus told him that he's like constantly maintaining a state of like being in the blues, being blue, because he has to maintain that to be able to write. And if he doesn't, he's too happy. And even Darren said the same, like he can't sing because he's too happy now.
That's amazing. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's the same as like, honestly, like the most emotional music I've written is when I've gone through some dark shit. Like every single time, no doubt about it. Like, breakups or losing people, it all, I don't know, it will push the most emotional stuff out of me, like it will translate directly into my music, or I will reach for like some samples or find a vocal or find something that replicates my feeling, like in music.
Would you say that's like the main thing that you're trying to do when you write? It's a really difficult question to answer, and I don't know the answer for myself, but it's like, what is it you're trying to convey? And is it, I think the best I can come up with is it's like the sum, for me anyways, it's like the sum of my influences, my aspirations career-wise, and also how fulfilled I want to be, but also like a tone and a mood. I just like there's tracks, for example, that I've got that I made ages ago that I think are cool, but there's something about them that I'm just like, I don't think I want to put that into the world because something's not quite right about it, and I can't put my finger on what it is. So I wonder if you had like a handle on what it is you're trying to achieve and what you're trying to like sound-wise or mood-wise or whatever.
I feel like this applies more to the musical stuff, but what I'm trying to achieve again is like, I think I mentioned this earlier a little bit, but what like the feeling I'm trying to convey, is the other person gonna like, is it gonna trigger the same feeling? Like I don't know, you know what I mean? Like like obviously certain notes, certain key, certain like chords will like trigger, like, can be like melancholic or whatnot, like I like melancholic music, happy, sad. And I try, because essentially that's what life is to me. Do you know what I mean? Like I was saying, it's highs and lows. So it's like trying to strike a balance between the two, you know, where it's like, okay, this track is emotional, but it kind of strikes, you know, a happy chord, but then there's also some sadness with it, you know what I mean?
I think it's like hopeful. I think hopeful is the word I would say, because it's like it's basically jazz, isn't it? Because jazz is quite sad but playful, but it also has like a hope or like a nice sort of optimism to it. Optimism's probably a nicer word than hope, I'd say.
Yeah. I guess it's like, you know, coming out the other side, like out of darkness into kind of a bit of light. But again, like I don't know if that's how people perceive my kind of musical stuff. Like I don't know, you know.
It's hard to know. You'll never know like how people perceive it exactly. I feel like it's part of it. I'm realizing with a bit more age is that I'm not great at communicating through the normal means of just like talking and conveying my sentiments about stuff. I find that quite difficult. If I sit down and write like an essay or a letter or something, I can do it better because I can think about it. But I find that my way of channeling that stuff is in music, even though it's not, or even just making stuff. It's not, even though it's not like literally representing words or ideas or anything. It's just like you've somehow got an idea something out of you into a form, and that in itself is like a form of communication or something. I don't know, but it's how I sort of like drain that tap a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, it is difficult. It is difficult because I know, you know, some tracks, you know, I could be like, oh, I love this tune. This gives me this feeling, and someone would be like, that's not the feeling I get at all from it, you know.
But that's what's interesting about art stuff, is that it's whatever the person who's observing it brings to it that gives it meaning, doesn't it? You can only put in what you put in, and then they can take out what they take out, sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's going to the interpretation is going to be different from person to person, but I think you can strike a general feeling for sure. And that's kind of, you know, I guess that's like somewhat a signature, you know, as an artist, which is important, you know. But yeah, it's strange how music translates from one person to the other, you know.
Always. I'm going to ask you two more questions, I reckon. Like the last one will probably be the same one because I want to just drill down into like what that looks like. But the penultimate one will be like if you could go back and give 2005 Alix, or when did you start? Around that time? Like you signed your first record, what, 2005, 2004?
Yeah, I think so. 2005.
Fuck. Do you remember when we sat in that? Do you remember when we were sat in that? You were down to play bass bin at Carbon, and we were sat in that room with Rohan. Do you remember that? Do you remember how fucking that was, mate? That was the first weekend that I remember hanging out and writing music, and that must have been 2005, 2004. And also the other reason I remember that is because we were staying at my mum's house. And Ed Friction picked you up in his convertible Audi. And I remember he pulled up outside my mum's house, and you and he were sat out there listening to music with the top down on the car. Do you remember that shit?
So funny.
That's a funny era.
That takes me back. Yeah.
That was a funny time. I guess, what would you go back, and if you could go back and say something to Al from 2005, what would it be?
To slow down a little bit and take a bit more time on everything. Not be so eager. And that goes from like, you know, the way I wrote music, or going out and socializing with people. Maybe like, I mean, I think it was good in hindsight that I was quite like extrovert at that age. Like I was, you know, going out a lot and meeting people, but I don't know, man. Like when I think of myself at that age, I just cringe a little bit, you know. I think anyone would. But yeah, I think it's just like, which, you know, saying this to myself could apply to, you know, upcoming producers, is to maybe, you know, focus on your sound and focus on yourself a little bit more, or like take time to develop, before throwing everything out there. I feel like, for example, some of my early stuff, I look back, I'm like a bit,
It's one of those ones though where like you can only know yourself now because you did that. So I think maybe if you started to focus on like who you are and what you're about too early, you might not work it. I don't know whether you necessarily know it without learning that lesson that you've learned.
Yeah.
It's definitely good advice, I think, for people to know themselves. I think that's like a good important to like be honest about who you are and what you're about, and to try and stick to that if you can.
I mean, I don't know how much that's relevant really, because, you learn who you are more the older you get, and that's life, and that's just like whatever it throws at you, like going through hard shit. That's how you build as a person. But it's more like a point of like, everyone's super eager. You want to like sign records, you want to do this, you want to do that. And I think, maybe just slowing down a little bit and, like focusing on your craft a little bit, wouldn't hurt. Because I know some people send me demos and they're like, oh, I've been making tunes for like 6 months, and they're all excited, and I'm like, you could just take a little bit more time. If you don't feel ready, you don't have, I guess that would be my advice, is to just focus on your craft a little bit. And I think maybe I could have done that as well, but I don't know if the outcome would have been different, like where I would be at now. Because I guess everything.
Yeah, it's like everything that's happening for you now is a result of everything that's gone before. So I kind of feel like looking back that I wouldn't change anything, but it would be like subtle advice, like you said, about, for me, it would be like, don't waste your 20s, like be in the moment and don't be thinking about the next thing. I feel like I wasted loads of my 20s, but also like the other thing is too, and I guess this is a little extra question that's not really, it's kind of relevant. It's like, I feel like I've sacrificed loads of potential, like, I don't know, like experiences and relationships, and not relationship with partners, but like, I don't know, like my music so overtook me in my 20s and all of my 20s, that I kind of, didn't get to do a lot of stuff. I know that sounds stupid because we've all been to so many amazing places, but it's like so much has suffered, like family relationships and like friendships, all sorts, just like fall by the wayside. And you only sort of start to realize a little bit when you're a bit older that how important all that stuff is.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely neglected like relationships and compromised, a lot of things for my music, and I guess being selfish, really, in some sense, like being like so insular, like just in your own bubble,
It's also quite headstrong as well, isn't it? You're really focused on a thing and you just want to get there, and so sometimes other things fall by the wayside as a result.
Yeah, it's just such a demanding sort of thing, like music, and like it demands so much time and effort, and and also the way the model is built, with touring, having to write music to get gigs, and then doing gigs that then affect you writing music. It's kind of a mad cycle, really, and it can be detrimental, I think. So I think like I do feel like I've definitely kind of lost relationships and friendships when I look back. But then it's again, it's like, would I be where I am if I didn't do that? I don't know. It's really hard to gauge.
It's funny. It's a funny one because it's difficult because it's just you wouldn't have made those sacrifices if it wasn't really, really important to you. And I guess that's the £1 million question, I think, is like, why is it so important? And why do creative people, or like people in anything that they give that much energy to, where does that come from? It's like, I don't even know why I have it. I've like,
I mean, like, I've always been creative, like, you know, art when I was younger, and just always wanted to create. And I think I'm just scared of living a life or having to live a life that doesn't involve being creative. And I think that's why I've sacrificed so much. You know, I was like, I want this. I want to live like this, like from art, from producing something that makes me happy. As much as it, you know, it fucks with my head sometimes. Like the end result, like, you know, being happy as an artist, like maybe not always, but being able to do this, like, because, you know, life, you have to have a job, like you've got to make money to survive. And like, if I'm going to do that and I can do it by doing my passion, then that's what I'm going to do. You know what I mean? Like, whatever happens, kind of thing.
That kind of leads nicely into the last question, which I will try and end with, even though we've touched on it, is like, what does success look like for you?
I mean, I have to think about it in two ways to answer that question, and that would be like personally, and then like success personally as a person, and success like as an artist, or, you know, let's say a career. I don't like to call it a career, but you know what I mean. And I think, like, for me, success as a person, like now in the age that I am, and, you know, from what I've gone through and experiences, is like, you know, being happy within myself, which is like a constant struggle. You know, ups and downs, like we previously mentioned, but like reaching a level where I'm like quite content and happy, and making other people around me happy and treating people right is like the most rewarding thing I think I can say at my age now. And, you know, like kind of evolving and learning from mistakes, and trying to be a better version of myself. And, you know, that you can always be better. And, and I have my, you know, my traits, you know, and I know them, and I know my, like, your negative traits, and it's like trying to overcome those, and you know, which is, it's not simple. And, you know, so yeah, just trying to be a better person, really, and not repeating mistakes and things that I've done in the past that I kind of can still dwell on nowadays, you know. And I think that's for me, that's a success in being happy and being a good person as much as I can be.
There is like a simplicity. There is a simplicity to it, isn't it? When it all boils down, it's like success is being fulfilled and happy and content, and yeah, and battling and winning some of those shitty battles with, I don't know, with demons, with yourself, I guess. It's difficult.
And I mean, there's various ways of doing that, you know. And I've cut out things, you know, out of my life and which is hard, man. Like, you know, like just certain things I've cut out, or like, you know, try and cut out. And yeah, it's a constant battle, man. You know, and so yeah, as a person, I think that's the true happiness, man, which is fucking hard to reach. You know, I don't know if I've ever. It's a constant battle, yeah, like every day.
But like you said earlier, with the peaks and troughs of making music, it's the same with life, isn't it? You can't, if you were happy all the time, you wouldn't know any different. You'd just be like happy. It's like, it's a contentment thing, isn't it? It's weird.
Highs and lows, man, because, you know, you wouldn't have the highs without the lows. Like, you wouldn't know what a high would be without a low, you know. It's yeah, and it's just how it is. And it's like, I have this weird, you know, when I wake up in the morning, I try and not straight away focus on, fuck, we need to do this with the label, or I need to write this tune, or I just try and wake up and like appreciate life a little bit in the morning, you know, and not like straight away fall into like work mode. But if you would like to talk like sort of success as a career, I think like for me, the most rewarding, again, like has been to have a helping hand in like, you know, with someone like Monty, for example. When I started working with him to now, I feel like he's progressed quite a lot. And I'd like to say, it would be fair to say that we helped him out a little bit, and with our platform. And that's like, there's nothing better than that, you know, seeing him happy He has his struggles like I do, like you do, you know, like I speak to him, you know, like everyone goes through it, but being able to treat him well and like give him advice if he needs to, or, you know, like it's just, that's kind of like, there's nothing better than that. I feel like, you know, like rewarding basically than helping someone out and seeing the results.
What about like on a personal career level?
On a personal career level,
because I just wonder the reason why I think it's an interesting question is because I wonder whether like the ultimate success that you might want for your career is like even compatible with like the ultimate success that you want overall. Do you know what I mean? So I wonder whether like there's
when I think about it, like what the fuck, when am I going to be like, oh yeah, I've succeeded, you know, like I don't know, it's just weird. Like at what point am I going to be like, oh, I'm happy as an artist? I don't think I'll ever be. And if I am, then it's probably the time I'll stop. I don't know. Like if I lose the drive or lose I don't know. As an artist, it's hard to say. But I guess like just staying true to what I do is gonna like make me happy. I know that's the one. You know, when I put a record out and I know it's 100% me and people receive it well, that's just kind of the best feeling, really. And nothing beats like, you know, playing a record and people in a club, when you feel their direct reaction, like fuck being on big stages and all that shit. If I'm in a small club and I play a record of mine and I can feel it makes people happy and I get that direct connection with people, then that's everything to me. I think still, like, there's no better feeling than that.
That's cool that's still really important after all that time. Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? It is so addictive. I think all of these things are I think all of the people that I've spoken to and most people who I sort of know and respect are pretty addicted to something, or they have addictive personalities to like certain things, like that adrenaline rush when you play a good tune, or that adrenaline rush when you break the back of a tune and suddenly it's all happening. It's all like they're positive addictions, I think.
I think like playing a tune out, because it covers both. It's like, because I love, you know, I'm essentially a DJ. Well, I am a DJ at first. That's how it started. But like playing your own record in a club is kind of covering both. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's just an amazing feeling, I think, for me anyway.
Wicked. All right, mate. Well, let's. It's great to catch up, and like, I haven't even spoken to you on the phone for fucking ages. Anyway,
that's one good thing of the situation at the moment as well. Is like spent more time like talking to people that I haven't regularly, you know, I haven't properly for a while, which is good. I feel like everything's resetting a little bit at the moment.
Yeah.
As much as it's a fucked up situation, some good is going to come out of this. Like I know it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think everyone has to stay positive and look at the opportunities that are available to them, and not. I know. I'm aware that it's like we're actually in quite a privileged position where, like, for example, I'm in a privileged position where I can sit and learn After Effects and be okay. But there's going to be a lot of people struggling, and I feel like it's. You know, it's one of those times where everyone's going to have to try and come together, but also see positive things that can come out of it, and also opportunities to learn and to adapt, and also for things to change a bit and not go back to normal.
Also, like in these times, if people don't if you don't feel like making music, that's totally fine. Like I see a lot of people online, like, you know, oh, I'm doing all this, that. If you feel like you're not able to be creative in this time, it's completely normal, because I'm finishing an album at the moment, but there are days where I'm like, it's a weird time. No one's been through this kind of thing. And I think if you're not feeling creative, then don't beat yourself up about it, because, you know, you don't have to. And it's, you know, it's natural to be feeling weird at the moment, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's like a nice sentiment for us to end on. And, yeah, thank you for taking the time, mate. I know it's taken us a couple of days to get it together, but thanks. Yeah, it's been good to chat.
Yeah, no, it's been great. I hope, like, you know, it's interesting at least.
All right, well, mate, enjoy. Good luck with the album, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon.
But yeah, man, take care. It's great to chat to you.